Okay. So Dex, I had these questions that I wanted to ask you, and they were more directed for the actual BodyMAP program. But I also took like a poll on Facebook and asked people to come up with questions. Some of them are more personal. Either they have clients that they've been having trouble with, and just some things that they've been having trouble with that they wanted to. And so I kind of wanted to take this interview now into a different realm. I wanted to make it more specific so people can see, and granted, you're not in front of these people. You're not feeling and seeing everything. So this may or may not be able to, but maybe it'll give somebody who's listening to this a concept of how you may approach it a little different, and maybe be very helpful for the people who took the time and asked the questions, which you got quite a few, so maybe
Sure.
we have to limit some of them. But I think in this particular case, I think it would be very helpful for just so people can start seeing some of the application processing
Yeah.
that takes place.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sounds
Would
good.
that be okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Like you quite rightly said. I mean, I'm not assessing a person, but I'll give you conceptualized answers to those scenarios, and we'll try and make it as realistic as possible.
Okay. So I got this good one from Erica because I've heard it before. I've seen it. Some people do it. Some people don't, which is talk about traditional stretching. And so how do you feel about traditional stretching a client? Sorry. Let me say that again. How do you feel about doing a traditional stretching protocol routine after the client's worked out? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it hurt them? Why would you or wouldn't you?
Well, how do I feel about it? In general? It's not necessarily a problematic thing after the workout. Beforehand, stretches are always applied very strategically because we're silencing. We're essentially making parts of the neurological system slightly blind when we carry out stretching prior to training. So that needs to be used judiciously. Post training, there are clearly some benefits to post training stretches, but again, you've got to. I guess it has to be applied to. Or the answer to this has to be applied to individual circumstances. Like stretching essentially silences down neurological feedback between the muscle and the brain, right? If you overstretch, if you put too much emphasis on stretching, you weaken the map that you've spent the entire training session creating. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. It's very often it would be better to apply more mobility-based work at the end of a training session than actual stretching. Now, there are some sections of the body that lend themselves quite well to that resetting, like around the neck and the trapezius. They seem to respond very, very well to some very light stretching, and this would be the main point as well. Like a lot of what we term developmental stretching, like we save our developmental stretching to the end of a session, right? That's how traditionally most trainers do it. I just understand that you're not really stretching anything. Like this concept that we've got that most people have lost a whole bunch of sarcomere is not necessarily the truth about what's really going on in the body. It's just that the neurological system has clamped those sarcomere down together. You can attempt to stretch those apart, which kind of creates a form of trauma in itself, or you can actually use other techniques. Some of the techniques that I will show you on the program will show you how you can take a person, increase what we would call their flexibility, which is really just their mobility, but they call their flexibility. You can increase a person's flexibility with a single finger placed judiciously on a single joint and ask them to do one very simple thing. And the most restricted joints you've ever seen in your life will start to go and then melt like butter. So am I against stretching? No, it does have its place, but it should be used judiciously, and it should be used after you've used the neurological resets as opposed to used primarily.
In conjunction with that, and you kind of touched upon it, Brandon asked about doing the self-myofascial release before or after exercise or on off days. Do you recommend doing those? I know the foam roller, I personally love it just because it feels good. But again, are you doing more harm in this particular case to all the clarity that you've gained in the map by really going in there with the let's say the foam roller in this particular case,
Right.
or
So, right, there's a couple of interesting parts to this, right? One part is that actually a lot of the result, or the perceived result, that comes off the back of a foam roller is very often a person quite simply going, "Thank God I've got off of that because it was so damn painful," right? So it's kind of a relative thing. Like if I stand here and I poke a needle in my eye for 30 minutes and then I pull the needle out, it kind of feels good when you pull the needle out, right? A lot of people aren't really opening anything up when they're doing their foam roller work because they insist upon doing their foam roller work into pain. Pain is an immediate threat on human physiology, right? So basically, you trigger pain in your body. Your brainstem now kind of acts and says, "Hold on, threat," because pain is always a threat. And now it starts to go into its threat responses. Very often, you lose anything that you might be hoping to gain. Right, so there is a correct way to foam roll, and that was, if we were to use things like a pain scale, you would probably never go above number 4 on a pain scale if you were foam rolling correctly, right?
Okay.
Most people I know are foam rolling up to like 15, right? Right, they're in such agony that you can really, the relief they get at the end, it can only be described, but it's just the relief of stopping. Nothing really happened, right? And their body is just thanking them for stopping, and they go, "I feel great." Right? Also,
oh my god.
there's a second component to that, is that pain always has an endorphin release associated with it, so you can actually feel good off the back of pain infliction, right? So there's that aspect. The third aspect I'd like to address is that myofascial release it's supposed to be strategic, right? A lot of the dysfunctions that we've got in our myofascia that needs correcting isn't linear, and yet foam roller kind of tries to create these linear openings, right? Opening up an IT band in a linear fashion from knee to hip is far less valuable than opening up the fascia that surrounds the entire upper thigh in a spiral or cylindrical fashion, right? So one of them actually serves you well and does a lot of good. The other one actually creates problems with the BodyMAP, with the BodyMAP, right? It kind of says, okay, well, I've just given you back the range. You've got this extra piece of range here now, but the actual reason why I took that range away from you is because I was under threat. You just increased my threat again. Right.
You just had more mobility to it.
Yeah,
and now
exactly. And again, as a physical therapist, you know this. Very often, adding mobility isn't the right thing to do, or certainly adding mobility manually, externally, like me taking you and yanking you into a whole bunch of new places, is not necessarily the right way to get there. A lot of self-myofascial release it's done quite carelessly, quite thoughtlessly, and doesn't really achieve what its stated aim is. And we know this because if it really did what it was supposed to be doing, you wouldn't still be foam rolling 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24 months later and using foam rolling as a major part of your program. The only reason you need to do that is because it actually doesn't work, right? And when I say it doesn't work, as in it doesn't hold. Like so for me, a big part of if something works is, does it hold? And foam rolling for most people doesn't hold.
Okay.